Hi everyone, welcome to a Facebook Live during lockdown. This is Kate Sheehan. How are you, Kate? You good?
Hi, good, thanks, Bridgette.
Good, and we're going to be focusing today, which is a huge topic. There's a whole lot of issues and topics to talk about. Shared care and lockdown. Now, Kate, first of all, tell us more about what you do.
Okay, so I'm a lawyer, and I mainly act for people to try and reach a resolution between themselves or agreement between themselves in terms of relationship property issues and shared care by agreement. If the parties are not able to reach an agreement, then I will represent them in court.
Fantastic. Now, there's been an issue that's come out over the last few days, and it's in relation to the COVID vaccine for 12 years and over. The fact that the Ministry of Health are allowing parents to book their children in with them at the same time they get the vaccine, but at the current time, there's no consent box or consent required from the other person, which is concerning, isn't it, from your perspective?
Well, yeah, at the moment, the Ministry of Health site allows you to book the children in or join with you at the same time to go and get the vaccine. But it doesn't have any consent box that says, do you have the consent of the other party, being the other parent, or anything like that on their form or their site. And that's what is the concern, because if one party wants the child to get vaccinated and the other doesn't, it is a guardianship issue, but at the moment there's no consent required. In fact, what they're actually saying on the COVID-19 site, and I'll just go to that if you want to have a look at it. It's covid19.govt.nz vaccines.
We'll be including all of this information attached to this live.
I'll just talk about what the Ministry of Health site is saying. So they're saying that parents and guardians who are eligible to book their vaccinations can also book in 12 to 15-year-olds in their whānau. Each person getting vaccinated will need a separate appointment, but you could try and join them together. And vaccination centres will do everything to accommodate 12 to 15-year-olds who don't have bookings. And that's really what the site is effectively saying at the moment.
So there will absolutely be issues in terms of, there might be one co-parent who hasn't been vaccinated, doesn't want to get vaccinated, and doesn't want their children to get vaccinated.
That's correct. That could happen. Then the question is, what do you do in that circumstance? If one parent's booked them in, effectively at the moment there's nothing preventing the other parent from doing that. That's really the issue at the moment.
And there's been a previous case, but not in relation to the COVID vaccine. And tell us more about that, Kate.
Yeah, so there has been a case where it says that where the judge was asked to make a decision on whether or not a child should be vaccinated. And the general rules of guardianship or care effectively is what is in the child's best interests. So the court will take into consideration whether or not it is in the child's best interest to get vaccinated or not. But there hasn't actually been a decision come out on the COVID-19 vaccine yet, probably because it's all quite new in terms of allowing 12-year-olds and over to actually get the vaccine. The FDA only approved this yesterday, I think. So it's only been formally FDA approved yesterday.
Right. Okay. Because, as a 12-year-old, old enough to be making a decision on whether they get the vaccine or not,
Well, that's kind of the question, but from what I can see on the Ministry of Health site as well, it's saying that it also allows a medical practitioner or a health practitioner to make a decision for the 12-year-old as well. So it's kind of overriding the guardianship consent issues at the moment. It is quite a controversial topic at the moment. As to whether or not the vaccine should be administered to 12-year-olds and over, because they're effectively children. and what the side effects of that are. But Pfizer have come out and said that it's FDA approved for adults, but also 12 years and over at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's very interesting, and I certainly think there needs to be more discussion on this point. And if anyone's wants to message us in relation to this issue, feel free to do so. So, Kate, let's talk about the shared care rules during COVID. What do they look like?
Yep. Well, the legislation that the government has implemented currently does allow for a shared care arrangement or shared care bubble, and parents to swap the children during level 4. So it does actually allow for that. But some of the rules say that it's meant to be only with 2 households at the most. And the people in the household are meant to be living on their own, but generally most people don't live on their own. They live with another partner and other children, or somebody else in the house. So the way that the law is currently that it allows the swapping of the children, but it doesn't account for the fact of what if somebody's living with somebody else or their children.
Well, that's right. The blended family scenario is very, very common.
It is very common. So it's a matter of common sense, really, in this situation. Like if you've got somebody who's potentially been exposed at one of the sites and has been notified that they've got to go and get the COVID test, perhaps you should wait until you get the negative test back before swapping the children. That would be the sensible and common sense approach to take. But generally, you do have to legally swap the children in accordance with any legal arrangements that you have.
So, and then that comes back to, talking about the fact that you've shared care within your community. But what if somebody lives in, let's say, Waipu, one of the parents, and one of the parents lives in, down south on the outer skirts?
Well, you're not allowed to swap within a significant distance. They're meant to be within the same, technically within the same area. And I think by area, they mean province, effectively, usually town and or province. So that's really where you need to be very clear on what you're doing. If for example, one's in the South Island, one's in the North Island, that's just not going to work. You're not going to be able to do shared care in that scenario. But if you're only 20 minutes or 30 minutes away, then perhaps you can definitely swap. So it's again a matter of common sense. And probably where the child is now is probably where the child should stay, I would say, based on that scenario.
So what about essential workers? When one parent is the essential worker and the other one is not?
Yep. So if one parent is essential and one parent isn't, at the moment, effectively, the childcare, there is childcare arrangements that the government have now announced for essential workers. The issue is, I think, it's really just anticipated that the carer will come into the household. So it hasn't been clarified as to whether or not, if you're an essential worker and your partner isn't, if they're staying at home, whether they have to look after the children and not the carer. So it's mainly anticipated for situations where that person doesn't have anyone else to rely on or to assist them in terms of childcare.
Absolutely. So what about the scenario where you have to get a COVID test and isolate?
Well, I think in that situation, the Ministry of Health has said that you should abide by their guidelines. So effectively what that means is that you should really wait until you get the negative test back and isolate in that bubble without exchanging the children. That's probably what is the sensible approach here. But in terms of legally, if you've got the shared care arrangement, that is what applies.
Has there been any cases over the last 18 months that highlight the issues in relation to shared care and the vaccine and obviously the virus? Obviously, we talked about the vaccine. There hasn't been. But
I'm not aware of any cases specifically, but there have. I mean, it comes up effectively in terms of shared care arrangements most parties easily talk to each other, but the situations where people aren't talking to each other, obviously that's where the more conflict's going to arise, and that's where you need to talk to your lawyer and try and make arrangements through the lawyers to try and facilitate what's happening.
Right. Let's talk about child support payments during this period.
Yeah, so child support's a big one because lots of people's income will be affected during this time. A lot of people have had to stop, well, the government's made everyone that's not essential stop work effectively. So people's income will be affected even if they're getting the wage subsidy and
600 a week.
600 a week. So what that means is that the IRD have said that if you think that your income is going to be affected, that you can actually apply for a reassessment through the IRD on the child support payments. So what that means is that if you are concerned that your income is going to be reduced due to COVID or the level 4 lockdown, you should contact the IRD and ask them for a new assessment, and that will affect any amount that any parent's getting effectively under the child support payments.
Right, fantastic. Now, spousal maintenance.
Yep, so, some people might have that in place. Yep.
And how does that, how could your spousal maintenance be affected during this period, during the lockdown period?
Well, if you're currently paying maintenance under a voluntary agreement, you need to reach agreement with the other spouse to pay a lesser amount. So say you're paying $500, you need to say, well, sorry, I can only pay you $200 during this time, and see if they will agree. Otherwise, you have to make an application to the family court if there's a court order in place to vary the agreement. Again, so if that happens, contact me and we'll see what we can do to try and assist you to resolve that. But effectively, you're left having to legally pay the amount that was agreed, notwithstanding the fact that your income might have dropped.
So is the court open during this period for dealing with cases in relation to spousal maintenance?
The court is open for urgent applications at the moment. In terms of urgent applications, generally that's domestic violence, protection orders, but it can also be some urgent care and custody issues related to that as well. So if there's any of those issues, anyone needs to contact me. But effectively, the courts are really running a limited scope. Like, it's not open for the usual hearings or things like that. They are trying to get up with the play with AVL or video conferencing, but not all the courts are kitted out for that at the moment.
So, Kate, from your perspective, with what's going on now, this is going to push people's cases out even further. So it's going to be more than sort of 18 months that people are going to wait to end up for some of their issues to be dealt with in court. Would you agree with that?
Well, the problem is there will be further delays. That's probably inevitable. So again, if people want to try and reach agreement, they should contact me and or their lawyer and to try and facilitate resolution between the parties. That can be done by alternative means such as mediation or arbitration. So they should contact me to try and facilitate that rather than wait it out for the courts to make a decision. But that's up to the parties concerned. If they can reach an agreement between them, the quicker the better, effectively.
And I do a lot of informal mediations with clients as well in relation to relationship, property, and custody too. So there are absolutely, there's lots of options for people. They don't have to be going to court.
No, they don't have to be going to court. And if they can reach agreement, the sooner the better. I mean, the sooner the better for everyone concerned, really, I think, even the lawyers, because they've reached a resolution and the parties can move forward, for that party. If you're stuck in a conflictual situation, if you're stuck in the court system, it's very frustrating for people, but it's also frustrating for the lawyers because we can only do so much. The resolution really needs to come from the parties themselves.
And I talk about this a lot with my clients. It's about managing your emotions, because at the end of the day, it's going to cost you a lot if you're going to go into a high conflict situation and having to go to court, and the emotional toll. You can't underestimate the emotional toll physically, emotionally across the board that it affects the partners, the children, and the wider community and the wider family. You just can't put a price on it. You really can't.
Well, yeah, you can. And lockdown is stressful. Like, it's stressful for parents because they're trying to do a job from home and look after the children and try and do both jobs. So it is a stressful time for people generally. And a lot of relationships fell over on the back of the last lockdown. So it's probably going to be the same situation here with frustrations, money being tight, looking after children. It's not an easy job for parents. So if you've got any concerns or wish to discuss anything, just call me and or Bridgette.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last lockdown, relationship demises, breakups, was at a 30% increase here in New Zealand, and in China it was nearly 40%. So
it's very stressful, like and all different kinds of stress. I think it's not just normal stress. I think there's a lot of anxiety out there about COVID-19 in the community, and that causes anxiety at home.
100%. So let's talk about online school. Obviously, students are at home having to use devices to do their online learning. What about the issue with devices needed to be provided to children because they haven't got access to devices?
Well, due to the lockdown happening pretty quickly, I mean, it happened like pretty much just overnight, effectively this time. Some of the devices haven't been able to be distributed to the various children. So I think that the teachers and the Ministry of Education were working behind the scenes to try and facilitate that. But generally it came down to whether the parents effectively have devices or the children already have their own devices and using their own technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to message us or contact me or Kate. We'll have our details. We'll put Kate's details into this this live stream. But thank you, Kate, for joining us and joining me and the viewers. It's been really insightful and has certainly, there's a number of issues with shared care when people are going through, during lockdown. So that's been really helpful. Kate and I will do another live stream next week. We'll put up the topic in advance, and we would really love to hear from any of you if you've got any questions or concerns.
Yeah, I mean, we're here to help. We're trying to help people resolve their issues so that they can move forward in life.
Absolutely. So have a fabulous day, everybody, and we will be back live streaming next week. Bye for now.
Thanks. Bye.